Welcome ladies and gentlemen to TXT Wrestling. This is the last episode before TXT Revolution. Let's get this show started. Here comes Dyson making his way to the ring. Here comes Steve Stafford making his way to the ring. Steve Stafford was never supposed to become a professional wrestler. Before the bright lights, roaring crowds, and wrestling rings, Steve was a businessman. He built his reputation through discipline, calculated decisions, and an unwillingness to accept failure. In the business world, Steve learned one important lesson: respect isn't given, it's earned. For years, Stafford focused on building his company and expanding his influence. He wore expensive suits, sat at conference tables, negotiated major deals, and surrounded himself with people who understood his vision. To outsiders, he had everything a man could want. But Steve wasn't satisfied. Behind the success was a competitive man who still wanted to prove himself. The turning point. One night, Steve attended a TXT wrestling event as a businessman and potential investor. He expected to see entertainment. Instead, he saw something familiar. The wrestlers reminded him of the business world. Competitors fighting for position, reputations being built and destroyed, alliances forming and collapsing, and only the strongest surviving. Steve realized that professional wrestling wasn't so different from the world he already knew. The difference was that inside the ring, there were no contracts to hide behind. There was nowhere to sit behind a desk. If Steve wanted respect, he would have to earn it himself. Entering TXT Wrestling, Steve Stafford made his first appearance in TXT Wrestling wearing the same suit he wore to business meetings. He didn't come out screaming. He didn't need to. He walked to the ring, took a microphone, and looked around at the wrestlers. Then he delivered his message. I've spent my entire life building empires. Now I'm here to build something bigger. At first, many wrestlers laughed at him. They called him a rich businessman playing wrestler. They told him that money couldn't buy wrestling ability. Steve didn't argue. He simply accepted the challenge. He began training. Every punch, every bump, every painful training session reminded him that the wrestling business couldn't be conquered from behind a desk. For the first time in his life, Steve Stafford was starting from the bottom. The businessman becomes a wrestler. Steve's business experience quickly became part of his wrestling style. He studied his opponents like he studied competitors in the marketplace. He looked for weaknesses. He calculated risks. He manipulated situations. And he never entered a match without a plan. Steve wasn't necessarily the biggest or strongest wrestler in TXT. He was the smartest. His philosophy became simple. You don't have to be the strongest man in the room. You just have to be the man who knows when to strike. As the weeks passed, the fans began to realize that Steve wasn't a joke. He was dangerous. The goal? Steve Stafford didn't enter TXT Wrestling just to have matches. He entered to build an empire. He wants championships. He wants influence. He wants respect. And most importantly, he wants to prove that the same mentality that made him successful in business can make him successful inside the wrestling ring. But Steve knows there's one thing money can't buy: a legacy. And that's exactly what he's come to TXT Wrestling to create. Steve Stafford's journey has only just begun. The businessman has entered the ring. Now the question is, how far will Steve Stafford go to become the most powerful man in TXT Wrestling?